Hey everyone, sorry for the quick delay there. I hope that we can move forward quickly, and as always, a recording will be posted. I want to welcome you to the 5th Montana Teacher Librarian Digital Media Blast. I'm Colette Bartow. I am wearing my OPI School Library Specialist hat for this afternoon's brief presentation and discussion. As always, the purpose is to share ideas, best practices, and have a discussion of some topics that come up frequently as I visit with teacher librarians, school administrators, and other educators from around the state. I have just a couple of slides with information on our topic, which is research and inquiry. And as always, if you would like to co-present a topic, please let me know. I'd love to add other voices to this series. You can interact during this presentation by hovering over the left side of your screen, and you can click on question and answer or see the showcase with some links that I've included, one link to my Twitter feed and another to the Google site that includes curriculum resources that we'll be referring to in this presentation. And if you're using a tablet, for instance, you'll see the showcase automatically with those links. And so with that, I want to move right on ahead. As always, you can access an archive of this presentation, and that's accessible from the Montana Teacher Librarian Google site. You will see a PDF of the slides from this presentation, and coming soon will be a Montana Digital Professional Learning Network course that you can watch, do a little activity, and then accrue OPI renewal units. So I hope to have the information on that before we do our next digital media blast. The topics that I've planned with some feedback and interaction from the field are as you see on the screen here. And I do want to remind you that there is an opportunity, if you like, to suggest other topics or even other presenters. I'm hoping to have a guest presenter with me for the next session, which I've tentatively titled Deeper Learning and the School Library. And so I'll let you know about that as we go forward. You can link to this form and the schedule and other information about the Digital Media Blast at the link that you see on the screen as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and launch into the topic at hand. As always, this is a digital media blast, and so I just have a couple of things that I wanted to share with you about research and inquiry. And for me, that always begins with our Montana content standards. There are different ways that inquiry or research are expressed in those standards. In particular, I want to direct your attention to our Montana Social Studies standards, our science standards, and our information literacy library media content standards. Each of these refers to either research or inquiry or information problem solving in slightly different ways, but they really do point to the same set of skills and approaches to problem solving. And so we can see a really close correlation of how these ideas are expressed in those standards. In information literacy library media, we say specifically that research is recognizing when information is needed, and then we locate, evaluate, and effectively use that information. That should sound somewhat familiar to our teacher librarians as a definition of information literacy. In our science standards, our current science standards, we talk about conducting simple to complex investigations, collecting and explaining evidence and data results, and then communicating findings with others. That's really the inquiry process in a nutshell. Some might think of that in terms of the scientific process, but really it's all about inquiry and the research students do. When we look at our social studies standards, which are some of our older standards in terms of, kind of the modern version of standards, in those standards, we talk about accessing, synthesizing, and evaluating information to communicate and apply social studies knowledge to real world situations. So in all of these cases, these three sets of standards really have a convergence in how we define the learning expectations for our Montana students around research and inquiry across the content areas. So if we look at two of the sets of standards, in addition to social studies and science that are really at the forefront, we look at the Montana Common Core standards for English language arts literacy and for mathematics. And as I began to look at these standards initially, I wanted to make sense of them from that research and inquiry standpoint. So if you see on the left-hand side, Information Literacy Library Media Standard 1 really gets to kind of the beginning parts of the research or information problem solving process, students identifying tasks and determining resources needed. If we think of this in terms of the big six skills, which are really the defining or the process that informed the writing of the library information literacy standards in 2008. That's really the beginning phases. We can relate that to the Super 3 as well, which is to plan our inquiry or our research process. Now, just for the sake of example, I pulled that standard 1 and I looked at the college and career readiness anchor standards for reading, writing, speaking, and listening that are kind of the upon graduation standards in our Montana Common Core standards for English language arts literacy. And as you look at the writing standards and the speaking and listening standards, as you see in front of you, you see that these standards refer to conducting sustained research projects based on focused questions. It also talks about gathering relevant information from multiple sources, talking about credibility, accuracy, that's evaluating information, and integrating information while citing sources. We see the same sorts of things in speaking and listening as well. Students have to prepare and effectively participate in conversations and collaborations, drawing from multiple perspectives, multiple sources of information, represent that information in a variety of formats and media, and really be evaluating information. So I hope you see with those two standards to begin with, information literacy, library media, the college and career readiness anchor standards. You see this very specifically at each grade level for those ELA standards. And then I also don't want to neglect our mathematical practices. And what makes the mathematical practices in the Montana Common Core standards, I think, a really powerful way to look across content areas, really look at the skills that are inherent and how those relate back to research and inquiry. So in the mathematical practices, there are 8 of them. And for this particular standards, I saw a strong correlation between the math practices 1, 3, and 4. So number 1, I think that you might agree that this really strikes to the heart of research and inquiry about making sense of problems and persevering in solving them. So with standard 1, we're understanding the task or the question, setting up what are the expectations for the activity or the assignment or the content that I'm dealing with, and make sense of that problem and continue on. Students are also constructing viable arguments and critiquing. That's all about evaluation. And number 4, modeling is about communicating our learning. So I wanted to set this up as kind of a beginning point to think about how do research and inquiry really look within our library and information literacy curriculum, to show you the connection between all of these standards and hopefully be able to then capitalize on the opportunity to integrate learning, have students practice these skills across content areas in classrooms. So again, as I was saying, we have the library information literacy library media standards, the ELA, and mathematical practices that are correlated and provide a clear definition of what those learning expectations look like. So if we move on and think about, how do we deliver this? We make a promise as teacher librarians in particular that we are going to deliver the program that meets the needs of our classrooms, our students, support our teachers professionally. But in very particularly when it comes to research or what we might think of as traditional library skills, I think we need to rethink how those things are delivered. And if you've heard me talk about this before, or even others like Mike Eisenberg, Craig Seasholes, some of our colleagues in the state of Washington and other places, we really want to think about the role of the teacher librarian in either delivering instruction and curriculum directly, whether that's in the classroom, the library, in the school as a whole, or I'd like to have you think about how that role plays out in connecting that learning within the home or the community, to think about how authentic audiences and real community-based problems might be a connecting point to practice these skills as well. So again, thinking about delivery, what is your role as a teacher librarian? You might within the library plan and teach research assignments or library skills assignments in isolation. And in some cases in the classroom, the teacher might do that, kind of disconnected from the resources or even the expertise of the teacher librarian. And so I want to encourage you to think about, how do you make those connecting points? Certainly all of these are valid ways to deliver the research or the library skills curriculum, but I think we can also think very strategically about how some of these could play out in our own school, and what we can really strategically capitalize on in order to ensure that that instruction is equitably delivered and accessible to all students, so that they can practice the skills that are so clearly outlined in our standards. So I look forward to hearing back from some of you about what you think about this model around delivery, and to have you think about how that really does play out. So here's some questions for you to think about. And I like to think about, what is our current status? Do some self-examination and figure out, where is research being taught? Do your curriculum maps or the research calendar that you've established tell you where that research is being taught? How is it being taught? Who is teaching it? Is it the teacher within the classroom? Is it the teacher and teacher librarian co-teaching? Is it the teacher librarian planning the instruction and helping to make sure that the resources are in place in the classroom or the school to deliver that? And I also want you to think about, how are those skills being assessed? It may not be something that's assessed directly through the library program, but we think of and can look to different sources within classroom assignments or classroom-based assessments that can give us an idea of how well kids are learning these skills and practicing them. So think about what your current status is with these questions to guide you, and then what is your desired future? And I would say that it's really important in terms of looking toward that desired future, that this is not a conversation that the teacher librarian has with themselves, just within the context of the library. You need to think about, where could research be taught, whether it's at home and community or the classroom, or if the school as a whole is taking on a problem to be tackled or solved. So that's getting more to, how could it be taught? Who could be teaching these research or inquiry skills? And then how can we assess it? I think we'll all look forward to seeing how our new state assessments are going to perhaps give us some information about the actual information skills that students bring to the table. So we'll look forward to that, and maybe next year we'll be able to do a digital media blast just on what we might learn from those results. So I just want to very quickly point you to some resources. The Google site link up above has a link to the full documents that are back on the slide with the information literacy, ELA, and math. You'll see, if you haven't already explored this, a curriculum guide that includes that correlation of the standards at each grade level. And if you scroll down on this page, when you visit the Google site, you'll see all of the grade level documents, a summary document that includes all the grade levels, and a couple of other resources there. But really, if you're thinking about looking at where research is being taught, how that's defined in your curriculum, I would highly recommend that you look at this Montana-specific library information literacy curriculum guide to use as a basic resource there. So if there are any questions, please let me know via chat or question and answer or Twitter, or what might be easiest of all at this point is to have you send me a message. You can send me an email message, or if we're friends or followers on Twitter, you can certainly send that out. I will just check briefly to see if there are any questions. I just want to remind you too, it's always important to be in touch with each other, and you can join the school library listserv by emailing me at cbartow@mt.gov, or you can join the Wired Montana listservs. Go to the Montana Library Association page for information about how to subscribe to Wired. You can visit the Teacher-Librarian Google site. I would encourage you, as I always do, to subscribe to the 3 Big Ideas newsletter that comes from the OPI-CSI division, or even like tonight, join the Montana Ed Chat. That's a great Twitter chat. And so with that, I want to just make sure you have my email address there directly to you. But thanks very much for joining me. As you can probably tell, I'm not in my office. I had to do a last minute ditch and come to my house to get the broadcast done. So I apologize for the technical difficulties and the delay. But at any rate, let me know if you have any questions. Stay in touch, and we'll talk to you soon.